let's talk about the stock of Uchumi Supermarkets in Kenya. Uchumi Supermarkets has seen an astonishing increase of 412% on its stock over the past 1 year. And yet, the company still has more than 7 billion in negative shareholders' equity. So, when you are buying the stock or the shares of Uchumi Supermarkets, what exactly are you buying, right? Is Uchumi finally back, or is the shares or the share price simply ahead of its fundamentals? Is what I want us to look at in details in this video. In case you are new here, my name is Afagzal Sifuna. I am a finance expert and qualified accountant, bringing you amazing videos about investing and making money each and every day. In case those are kind of topics which you like, down there is a button called subscribe. Click that button for you to subscribe to my channel, and I will still add it. Drop a like on this video. And by the way, in case you want more and deeper resources about stock market investing, I've also attached a link to resources which you can access at affordable price down in the comment section. Go and purchase those resources for you to be able to level up when it comes to investing in stocks and understanding stock market and how to go about making money in the stock market. Having said that, let's look at the company snapshot. Of course, Uchumi Supermarket began in 1976. In its initial years, really gained traction in the country, right, to become one of Kenya's biggest supermarket chains. But rapid debt fuel expansion eventually pushed the company into severe financial distress, as we all know, because things got extremely tough for Uchumi about 10-15 years ago, right? And today, Uchumi is a very different business. And I'm saying so because rather than operating the large supermarkets network it once had, the company has significantly slimmed down, okay? And even right now as we're speaking, I think it was just a few months ago when it opened 2 of its branches in Nairobi, reopening and trying to get back into that kind of business, of course, through a different model. Because at the moment, we are talking about it having court-supervised Company Voluntary Arrangement, or CVA. And of course, the business has also changed its focus and has focused on asset management, leasing, and institutional commercial supply, rather than the traditional supermarket retail chain, which it was known for in the country. Therefore, if you are buying the shares of Uchumi right now, it isn't the Uchumi which you knew 10-15 years ago, as you are about to see in this comprehensive video. Starting with the investment thesis. In case you are buying Uchumi stock, what exactly are you buying? The very first thing which you are buying is turnaround potential. And I'm saying so because Uchumi has gone from massive losses to recording a net profit in 2025. That's significant because the company had not achieved a comparable sustainable turnaround for years. It had been in losses for many years, okay? Secondly, you're going to be purchasing asset monetization. And I'm saying so because Uchumi is increasingly generating income from property assets, right? Remember, I've said it is having a shift from its previous model. And an example is looking at its Langata branch, where the leasing is happening to China Square, right? It was able to get rental income and therefore increase its rental income to 61.7 million Kenya shillings, up from 13.4 million Kenya shillings. And then third, you're going to be banking on share price momentum. And I'm saying so because, as we've seen over the past 1 year, the shares of Uchumi have increased by 412% in 1 year and 40% year to date. So you're going to be banking on share price momentum. Having said that, let's investigate the financials. Are financials backing Uchumi, or even so giving it a very strong investment thesis, or there is some weakness around the financial health? Looking at the numbers, starting with revenue, Uchumi's gross revenue increased from approximately 36.1 million in 2023 to 65.4 million in 2024, and then to 123 million in 2025. That's more than 3-fold increase in 2 years, okay? And then when you look at gross profit, the gross profit also increased substantially because it's increased from 5.5 million in 2023 to 15.5 million in 2024, and then 30 million in 2025. That tells us that gross margin did increase from where it was in 2023 by 15% and then jumped by 24% in 2025. But operating profitability is even more interesting. And I'm saying so because in 2023, Uchumi recorded an operating loss of 50 million Kenya shillings. In 2024, operating loss actually did widen to 152 million Kenya shillings. And then in 2025, Uchumi finally reported an operating profit of 7.6 million Kenya shillings. Why is this an important milestone? It is important because operating expenses fell dramatically to about 91 million compared to 200 million in 2024. And this so because of professional and legal costs also did decline, therefore reducing the litigation burden on this particular company and made it have a slight profit in 2025. But we have a very big problem when it comes to Uchumi stock. And the big problem is when it comes to net profits and also when it comes to shareholders' equity. Okay? The income statement is very shaky because it was extremely negative. It was extremely negative in 2023, and then they jumped some positivity in 2025 after it also being negative in 2024. That isn't reliable. And then beyond that, looking at the balance sheet, shareholders' equity is on the negative. And I'm saying so because in 2023, shareholders' equity was negative 7.09 billion Kenya shillings. 2024, it was negative 6.98 billion Kenya shillings. And then 2025, it is negative 7.05 billion Kenya shillings. In other words, despite returning profitability, Uchumi still has more than 7 billion Kenya shillings in negative equity. And as such, total liability remains at 10 billion Kenya shillings. That is very, very shaky because if liability is 10 billion Kenya shillings and then assets are about 3 billion Kenya shillings, that tells us it is still in very murky grounds, right? And talking about that, let's look at cash flows, right? And here is where we have another warning. Despite reporting a small profit in 2025, Uchumi's cash position fell by approximately 63% to 40.1 million Kenya shillings. That tells us something very important because accounting profit doesn't necessarily mean the company is generating significant cash for shareholders, right? A large part of Uchumi's recovery remains tied to restructuring, debt obligations, and asset-related incomes, which of course is quite a shaky thing too. And then when you look at dividends, if you are buying Uchumi for dividends, just stop here. Because for the past 3 years, Uchumi has paid zero dividend. This is not an income stock per se, and therefore the company hasn't declared any dividend. And then looking at valuation, also on valuation, things seem to be quite off. And I'm saying so because just looking at the key valuation matrices, for example, the PE ratio. The PE ratio of Uchumi is somewhere between 68 to 74 times. And this so because Uchumi's earnings are still extremely small, right? So remember, the company only had 8.7 million in net profit in 2025. So you're going to be paying a very high multiplier for small earnings. Therefore, the PE ratio is something quite insane on this particular stock. And then looking at the PB ratio is essentially meaningless because, guys, we are talking about it being on the negative when it comes to shareholders' equity. In fact, negative upwards of 7 billion Kenya shillings. Therefore, the PB ratio is essentially meaningless, okay? And then looking at the dividend yield is zero because the company didn't pay any dividends, right? And therefore, from the face of it, it might seem like the company does not look cheap, but in reality, it is going through very, very stringent dynamics. And so, as we come to the end of this video, would I buy or sell the stock of Uchumi? I think, let me give you the two cases, okay? Because where I sit, I think this stock is essentially speculative, not a stock which a person will jump onto and say they are jumping on a given stock to make money reliably. Therefore, I can't say it is speculative, but then again, depending on the risk appetite, you could be on the bullish side or even so bearish side. And the bullish case for this particular stock is, first and foremost, there is a continued growth on revenue, right? Second, there's expanded profitability and also institutional contracts, right? Third, there is rental income. Fourth, this particular company keeps operating and ensuring the costs are under control. And then fifth, there is resolution of historical liabilities which is going on, right? And then sixth, there is successful execution of the company voluntary arrangement, and then it is also monetizing its assets. So to be fair, it is doing some things towards it getting out of trouble, right? And of course, some investors are of course paying a premium on this stock, banking or speculating on it getting out of trouble. And then when you look at the bearish case, simply put, what is not working or even so, what is red flags when it comes to the stock and business of Uchumi? First and foremost is the negative equity. Negative equity of 7 billion Kenya shillings is quite a thing. And then secondly, it is huge liabilities because cumulative liabilities are more than 10 billion Kenya shillings. Third, we are talking about weak liquidity because cash at only around 40 million Kenya shillings doesn't really mean much for this kind of business in case it is aiming to do anything substantial. And then the fourth thing is no dividends. In case you want to invest for dividends, this isn't the stock for you. Number 5 is competition. Kenya's supermarket industry is highly competitive, and therefore Uchumi working to rewind or turn around its position fully is going to be quite an uphill task. And then the other kind of risk is property risk, right? Because yes, it's trying to get into property business, but then again, ongoing court battles and also the reality of property market risks in Kenya is something that this stock is going to be exposed to. And then finally, share price risk. With a rally upwards of 400%, expectations are already much higher. Will it continue getting high or even so, things are going to be off? So guys, that's the reality when it comes to the stock and the business of Uchumi. What do you think? As I've said, where I stand, for me, is more of speculative watching, right? Not really going all in on purchasing this particular stock because some key aspects of fundamentals are off. But then again, is a stock worth watching to see how it fully turns around, because in case it's able to turn around, it's gonna mean it's gonna be an enticing stock. In case you are an investor out there, do you have the stock of Uchumi? If not, will you buy the stock of Uchumi? Comment down below. Let's continue discussing. Cheers, guys, and you all stay safe.